The drama surrounding the latest escalation in the Middle East unfolded with shocking speed, the kind of speed that turns geopolitical tension into open confrontation almost overnight. For weeks, the region had existed on a knife's edge. Intelligence reports hinted at preparations, military analysts debated intentions, and diplomats worked behind closed doors to prevent the worst. But when the moment finally arrived, it arrived with the unmistakable thunder of missiles streaking across the night sky. The attack began without warning. Across Israel, air raid sirens shattered the quiet of the evening as Iran launched a massive barrage of missiles. The weapons arced high above the region before descending toward multiple targets, cities, strategic infrastructure, and military installations. The sky lit up with the bright trails of incoming projectiles, each one a reminder of how quickly conflict could spiral beyond control. Israeli air defense systems roared into action. Interceptor missiles blasted upward, racing to meet the incoming threats in mid-air. Explosions erupted high above the cities as some missiles were destroyed before they could reach their targets, but not all of them were stopped. Several managed to slip through the defensive net, slamming into locations across the country with devastating force. Within hours of the strikes, the United States responded. The retaliation came swiftly and decisively. In the dark waters of the Persian Gulf, American naval forces received orders to engage. Precision-guided cruise missiles launched from U.S. warships cut across the sea toward their targets. One of the primary objectives was an Iranian naval vessel operating in the region. Moments later, the quiet of the night was shattered again, this time by the impact of American firepower. The missile strike hit with overwhelming force. The Iranian vessel erupted into a violent explosion that tore through its structure. Flames climbed into the night as the ship began to sink beneath the waves. Within minutes, it disappeared beneath the surface, leaving behind only burning debris drifting across the water. But the operation didn't end there. Additional American strikes targeted Iranian oil storage facilities along the country's coastline. These massive fuel depots, essential to Iran's energy infrastructure, suddenly became the focus of a series of precision attacks. When the missile struck, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Fuel tanks burst apart in towering fireballs that lit up the coastline for miles. Thick columns of smoke rose high into the sky as flames consumed the storage sites. The explosions could be seen from far away, bright flashes followed by roaring infernos that signaled a dramatic escalation in the conflict. At the same time the strikes were being carried out, another critical decision was made far from the battlefield. A full combat mobilization order was issued across all branches of the United States military. The message was simple and direct. Every available unit was to move to immediate combat readiness. Across bases, airfields, and naval installations, the order triggered a rapid and coordinated response. Personnel who had been preparing for the possibility of escalation suddenly found themselves executing plans that had long been rehearsed but rarely activated. One such response unfolded on a quiet military airfield where the first signs of mobilization were already underway. Two CH-53 Sea Stallion heavy lift helicopters sat on the flight line with their enormous rotors slowly turning. Even at idle, the aircraft projected a sense of raw mechanical power. The spinning blades kicked up powerful gusts of air that swept across the concrete as ground crews moved quickly around them, completing final checks and clearing equipment from the rotor wash. Inside the nearby ready room, helicopter pilots prepared for their mission with the calm efficiency that comes only from years of training. Flight suits were pulled on and zipped tight. Survival vests were strapped securely over their chests. Each pilot methodically checked his gear, confirming that every tool and piece of equipment was exactly where it needed to be. Sidearms were secured in holsters, helmets were lifted into place, and communication systems were tested. Outside on the airfield, Marines had already assembled near the helicopters. They stood in organized groups, each squad assigned to a specific aircraft. Their appearance reflected the seriousness of the moment. Every Marine carried a full combat load: body armor, helmets, rifles, ammunition magazines, grenades, radios, water supplies, and rations. The weight of the gear pressed heavily on their shoulders, but none of them seemed to notice. This was what they had trained for. When the command was given, the first group moved toward the lead helicopter. They boarded quickly through the side personnel door, stepping into the cavernous interior of the CH-53. Inside, the noise of the engines was deafening. The aircraft vibrated with controlled power as Marines took their seats along the interior walls, securing their equipment and preparing for takeoff. Not far away, on the same airfield, another helicopter was being loaded for a very different mission. A Chinook, recognizable by its distinctive tandem rotors, waited with its rear ramp lowered to the ground. Marines moved up the ramp in a steady line, filing into the cargo hold where they took their seats along the sides of the aircraft. But the most important cargo wasn't inside the helicopter. Beneath the fuselage, ground crew members worked carefully to attach a large artillery piece to an external sling. The weapon, a towed howitzer, hung suspended beneath the aircraft once the rigging was secured. The crew checked every strap and connection with meticulous attention to detail. The load had to be perfectly balanced and secure. A mistake here could be catastrophic once the aircraft was airborne. Finally, the signal was given. The Chinook's rotors accelerated, generating a powerful downdraft that sent dust and debris swirling across the airfield. Slowly, the massive aircraft lifted into the air, carrying the howitzer beneath it like a giant mechanical crane. With the howitzer swaying gently below, the helicopter began flying low across the terrain toward a military camp that had been selected as a forward position. As the Chinook approached its destination, the pilots carefully reduced altitude. The crew chief watched through the open ramp, guiding the aircraft downward with hand signals and shouted instructions over the roar of the engines. Slowly, the howitzer touched the ground. Once the weight of the gun settled into the dirt, the sling was released and the helicopter lifted away, moving to a nearby landing zone where it set down moments later. The rear ramp lowered again. Marines stepped out and immediately moved toward the artillery piece. There was no wasted time, no hesitation. The moment the weapon touched the ground, they began transforming it into a functioning firing position. Ammunition crates were opened and stacked nearby. The howitzer's trails were spread and locked into place. Spades were dug into the earth to stabilize the weapon against recoil. Sighting equipment was mounted, and shells were carefully arranged within easy reach of the crew. By the time they finished, the artillery piece was ready to fire. As evening approached, the operation continued to expand. 2 additional helicopters arrived at another forward location carrying more Marines. The helicopters landed in a wide open area, flat ground with no buildings, no natural cover, and no permanent structures. This was not a prepared base. It was simply a raw patch of terrain that would soon become something much more.